Hello, and thank you for joining us yet again for an episode of That Solo Life, the podcast for PR pros and marketers who work for themselves. I am Michelle Kane. My company is Voice Matters, and I'm here as ever with my wonderful co host, Karen Swim. She keeps us all rocking and rolling over at Solo PR Pro. Hi, Karen. How are you?
Hi, Michelle. I'm good. I'm good. I'm really, in spite of the not so spring-like weather, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah,
How
right? Right?
you
It feels a little chilly for April here in the upper
doing?
Midwest and Northeast. I'm thinking, wait
Mhm,
a second. I
yeah.
accept that there are April showers, but give me a few more degrees with them.
Let's hope it brings Mayflowers,
Oh,
right?
I'm sure it will, and Mayweeds, but we won't talk about that. Always focus on the flowers, not the weeds. Speaking of weeds, as in not getting into the weeds,
Yeah.
that's really what we've come here to talk about today is client communication. How
Yeah.
can you keep that pipeline flowing and make sure that, expectations are set? Everyone's, everyone's in the loop so we all know what road we're on and that we're all moving forward on it.
This is actually one of my favorite topics,
Yeah.
because it comes up a lot in terms of the problems that public relations professionals experience. And
Mm,
I think that this is not the sole domain of solos. I think that this happens in workplaces all across the country where you the end result of bad communications are people feeling like there are unmet results,
yeah.
frustrations, stress, and y admittedly, you cannot resolve every single issue proactively, but there's a lot that you can do to set a foundation so that it's a very successful client or work relationship, and I think that the key to that is communication, so I'm
Mhm.
so jazzed to be tackling that.
And I'm gonna presume you would agree. I always say, you know, all business is relationship at a
Yeah,
certain level, and the key to a good relationship is communication. And,
yeah,
just setting that up, and I know we preach this all the time of, when you're working with a client, establish what outcomes they want to see. How are we going to get there, and how are we going to measure them? All part of keeping a good line of communication going with your clients. It just is. You have to sit down at the beginning of the relationship and just say, "Hey, first I just, we start with where does it hurt? Okay, well, how are we going to resolve that? And what does that mean
yeah.
to all of us?"
And I know that we're gonna talk about onboarding, but I honestly believe that this communication foundation starts from the very first meeting or
Mm,
conversation. As sometimes we're so eager to win. We want every opportunity, and that's a great thing because you want to have choices. So, you're presented with a prospective client and you are in it to win it. You want them to know that you're smart, that you're valuable. And then on the back end you start to do some assessing, but I would love for us to take a step back and to think
mhm,
about even those interactions. Perfect example, if in setting up a meeting for your very first client call, you're finding that the person is super slow to respond, very spotty in their communications with you, maybe they don't respond until a weekend or after hours all the time, and it's several days, treat that as the gospel truth because
mhm,
how they're responding to you now is probably how they're going to respond to you in a relationship.
mhm.
And you have to really start to think about, does that communication style work for me? Do I
Right.
want someone who only answers me in the middle of the night? Sometimes that means that it's a super busy person and they just can't seem to get the days organized to communicate during business hours. It could mean that you're dealing with somebody that is a evaluator of the service and not your main
Mhm.
contact. So you want to suss that out as well.
Right.
And I'm not saying don't take the meeting. I'm just saying take notes of these things and you can address them even as you're doing your first call and as you're talking about your business and you're talking about how you work. Make sure that you ask questions, like
Mhm,
who would be involved, who would be the day-to-day contact, how do you guys work? What are your workflow processes and systems? And
mhm.
because you can weed out a lot of problems later if you ask questions on the front end.
Right, right, and keeping in mind too that communication is more than just me telling you something. It's all of that. It's how someone is, treating you verbally and non-verbally. And these are all things you put together and, especially as solos, the beauty of it is we can choose whether or not we want to work with someone or if that's really going to mesh with our style. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so you have to kind of be honest with yourself up front. And I'm sure you've had this too. You'll have someone who's gung ho and wants to get going, and then you hand over the proposal, and then you literally do not hear from them. You wonder, did they move away to an island? Are they super ill? Like, what's happening here?
I mean, honestly, that's happened to me a couple times, but I'll tell you, one of my most favorite client relationships, and they're no longer a client, but the relationship persists,
Perfect.
past that, and the relationship didn't end for bad reasons, it was
Right.
because of merger and acquisition. It took me 1 year 1 year from that first meeting to actually close this deal, and
Yeah.
I just I mean, this is where you have to really be discerning. Yes, the person was really busy, yes, there were things going on, but here's the funny part. I followed her from in terms of just trying to get the business
Yeah.
from 3 companies later.
Oh
3
my
companies later
goodness.
when we ended up working together. 3
Wow, that's amazing.
started at one company, then she moved to another company, had to, I don't wanna say chase her down, but kept in contact, kept nudging,
Yeah.
"What's going on? Do you need help there? Let's hear about
Yeah.
the job." We would have these periodic phone calls, we'd talk
Yeah.
about stuff, and it's like moving, moving, moving.
Yeah.
3rd company 3rd company
Third
is
company's the charm.
3rd company. So, I mean, sometimes it does pay, like, I'm somebody
Oh,
that
yeah.
if it's worth it, I'm not giving up.
Right.
But during these times, of the pandemic, it's really not uncommon for people to go dark for a number of reasons:
Right.
overwhelm, burnout, taking time out of the workforce, just there's so many reasons, and people are so overwhelmed that sometimes they just don't have the bandwidth to get back to you.
Yeah.
Stop taking that stuff personally. If
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
so
Yeah.
again, that's where you have to really do a critical assessment and not yes, you should have a standard. Yes, should have a checklist, but you have to apply what you know. Sometimes your gut says, you know what? I think this is worth following up on. I think this is worth another conversation. Other times you're like, yeah, you know what? I don't even really want this business that bad.
Yeah. And I also live by the maxim of, whatever's meant to be is meant to be. Not that I'm passive about it, but yeah, a lot of times, like you say, it has absolutely nothing to do with you. Because
Yeah,
let's face it, I mean, there are times I don't like to let things go for months, but I mean, shoot, I feel bad if a day goes by and I haven't responded to someone's email. But some days you literally cannot get to it, or you run out of bandwidth. And
true.
and
True.
and and whatever they're asking is not a house on fire either, so it's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to be right there, right on it. Um,
Well,
and
let's
like
talk
you s
about some of the pitfalls, like,
yeah,
what happens, in client relationships that can be solved with better communication.
and I think like you say, it starts with that first conversation, and then you can move it into starting with even your proposal, spelling things out explicitly in the scope of, "Here's what I'm hearing from you, so here's what I think you need, and here is exactly what I am gonna give you
Yeah,
for the fee you're paying." Not that you're
yeah,
listing every minutia, but you know what I mean? Just so they have an idea, "Oh, okay, and by the way, this is what we expect to get from
yeah,
it." And also even, whether we're going to do weekly check-ins, monthly check-ins, how, please let like you say, point person, how can I track you down? How can we find each other if we need something quickly? Um, all of those things coming together.
yeah. I mean, so here are 2 things that I personally do that I think people might benefit from, and you can adapt this to your style. During the conversation process when we're talking about I make sure to say how our team works.
Mhm.
I talk about where we're based, and we also talk about how we're efficient. And our efficiency means, and we spell this out very clearly. We just say it very
Yeah.
plain. Our team does not do weekly meetings. We limit
Right.
meetings to X amount of time. For some clients, it's once a month and it's a quick half-hour meeting. For others, it's bi-monthly and they're
Yeah.
half-hour meetings. And we tell clients
Yes.
that because we use our time very efficiently for you, so we don't take up a lot of meetings. Obviously, if something
Right.
is going on and we need to meet, we're happy to do that. But for
Right.
regular meetings, we keep them to once a month or twice a
Yeah.
month, half an hour, quick. And not one single client, not one has ever pushed back about that. So we're really clear about that. But then in the onboarding process, we have an onboarding document for clients that we
Mhm.
customize, and it has our information, our hours,
Mhm.
so that they understand. And we tell them this like, hey, listen, if you send us email, we understand some people work at weird hours, you work
Mhm.
when it's on your mind and you're doing stuff.
Mhm.
We're not gonna answer until the next day.
Right.
Be up about that.
Yep.
I don't care if clients text me, and there are a couple clients that, will text back and forth at night sometimes if
Yeah,
something
me too.
like a media interview comes in and we're, coordinating. I don't care about that, but
Mhm.
you have to set your boundaries and have clients respect them.
Right.
Um, and I spell that out in your onboarding
Yes.
document. When you do your kickoff call, reinforce that. The other big area that I see problems crop up is around scope and measurement.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Just, determining those boundaries.
Yeah,
And whether that means we talk about this all the time. I mean, there's no guarantee in placements, you know? There's no
yeah,
guarantee. So,
yeah,
just to be you can't promise, "Oh, yes, this is going to get placed in the New York Times on this time." I mean, we all know, roll your eyes. It's like, of course, it doesn't work that way. But, we do the best we can. I know with, again, my clients are more, locally based and regional. And I say, you know what, we'll pitch it. If it doesn't get picked up, or even if it gets picked up in one, we'll have that to point back to, your news will still be out there as is what I like to do. And,
yeah.
in the world of social, you can set more finite, um, parameters for what your goals are and, just work from there. But knowing in this world that we work in, it's not really like a science when we can guarantee we're going to gain 1 degree each month, you know.
And
But
I think metrics is something that we'll tackle more
yeah,
in depth in the coming months because it's the area that trips up a lot of PR people.
yeah.
And I'm gonna give you something super simple to take the scariness out of it, because when we say metrics, people think data, analytics, numbers, and it makes their
Yeah,
head blow.
right.
Very simple way to measure success is to talk to your client. And you can ask this really simple question. So I always work from a plan. We tell our clients from day
Mhm,
one that we work from a plan. We only do a plan for 1 quarter at a time because too
mhm,
many things can change. We have a loose idea of what the year is going to look like, but we plan. So we do quick plans each quarter. That allows
mhm,
us to shift focus and priorities if something comes up with the client. And we try to work from campaign so that we have something that is guiding us.
mhm,
We always say to the client, what would success look like for you? What would that mean?
mhm.
That's very simple language. You're not asking them to say, "Hey, we need to see
Yeah,
20% of this." If they give you something, then that gives you, the information you need. Let your client tell you how are they measuring
yeah.
success.
I love
Then
that.
you take their end goal and you say, "Here's how we can contribute to that success." Because
Mhm,
sometimes, it's a bigger goal and it's going to involve more than just PR.
mhm,
Here's how we can contribute to that goal. Now you can reverse engineer it to like, okay, so here's what we're going to measure. And you
mhm.
pick the things that are going to show your progress against what your client told you that they want. I think we get bogged down and then we have these arguments over
Oh, yeah.
ABT, which is not a great measurement, and impressions and engagement. What does success look like to your client? Maybe your client doesn't care about any of those things.
Right,
All
right.
they care about is how many people came to our website to download this case study?
Yeah,
Can you help me with that? How are you driving traffic to the website? So now, if that's what your client really, really cares about, measure that. That's easy.
Yeah.
That doesn't take an analytics degree to be able to do that. And again, this is communication. It's not making
Yes.
an assumption about what your client wants to see. It's asking them, what does success look like for you?
Yeah.
Don't make an assumption about it. Ask,
Yeah.
then figure out, okay, here's the measurements that we can give you
Yeah.
on a monthly basis, on a bi-monthly basis, whatever reporting you decide on with the client to show them how you're progressing against what you said you would do.
Oh, no, and it's perfect because, it they then of course, they're gonna have ownership. They're the client, but it really gives them the ownership of what their idea of success is because, like you
Yeah,
say, we may have an assumption of, "Well, I think success for you might be X," but what I really need to know is what does it look like for you? And
yeah,
all the roads that we can get there is just ideal. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, we tear ourselves up into knots and we
Yeah,
look
we
for
do.
tools. Should I use this? Should I use that? I need to do this, and
Yeah,
okay, but what's important to your client?
yeah.
Here's the funny thing, I do media relations, I do the full peso model.
Mhm,
Not every client wants the full model, though. I have
mhm,
clients that could care less about earned media.
mhm.
That's not what they want. But some PR pros, even though your client doesn't care about that stuff, you are so fixated on it that then you're like in knots, like, I gotta get a hit, gotta get a hit. And you sound like an addict. And it's like, is that what your client cares about?
Yeah,
What
do
does
they
your
do they
client
really?
care about?
Well, and I think you're wise when you say you plan quarterly because, and it's interesting with the PR side for my clients is, initiatives that we do. And, a lot of it's still ongoing, just trying to generate, awareness, right?
Yeah,
So looking for those opportunities, but then even so, at least annually check in and say, okay, so when we, establish these were your goals. Are these still your goals? Is this still the target market
yeah,
you want to go after? Are you
yes.
still trying to find, small businesses, 100 to 200 people who need XYZ? Is this still who you're interested in getting to? Because, you could get so far down a road and they're going, the complete other direction. It's like, uh-oh. So don't
And
go on autopilot.
I promise you, unless you ask questions, they will forget to tell you.
Oh,
Some of the
totally.
things that I routinely ask about is if they have a content calendar, an events calendar. I always say, "Is there anything going on in the business, right
Mhm.
now? Are there any new product developments?" They forget these things because 'cause they're just
They
doing
do.
their work, and they forget to tell you, and like, "Oh, yeah, we have blah, blah, blah." So that's important, and then that allows you to sometimes call out things that they're taking as routine and saying, that's really interesting that you guys are doing that. That would be a great campaign for
Yeah,
the next quarter. And
exactly.
um, I we've set this on this program. I'm a huge fan of documenting. Documenting holds you and the client accountable. And then if you need to tweak the plan, you have a document that you can go back to that your client has access to as well that you can tweak if things because again, things
Yeah.
shift. Sometimes they have made a personnel change and it's a big deal and it's going to shift the priorities internally or they signed on a new partner or signed on some new relationship and that now becomes a priority, which is why again we our rule is quarterly plans and
Mhm.
monthly it's too frequently, so
Yeah.
quarterly with monthly check-ins on the
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah.
Like,
Because if
okay,
you if you
here are 4 shift there.
Yeah, because if you operate monthly, you end up that's all you do every month. Not all, but it takes up such a chunk that
Yes.
you're just
Yeah.
stuck grinding on busy work and not accomplishing
Yeah.
anything. So, yeah, the time flies too quickly, but that
Yeah.
that is so true, and again, that's also another thing, don't take it personally if something slips their mind. It's like, "Oh, yeah, we're sponsoring this thing," and you think, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" Well, again, they're busy doing their jobs, and, yes, you're a part of the team, but in the day to day, a lot of things can get lost. So and they may not think of some things as being interesting enough to do something with just because it's part of
Yes.
their, part of their day to day. So it's up to us to find these opportunities even from within. Yeah.
Absolutely. Ask questions, write things
Mhm.
down, share,
Yes.
communicate, communicate.
Yes. Communicate. I mean, even the texting, it's fine if you're texting with clients, but I still love, primarily email because
Yeah,
that's as close to a written word, paper trail, if you will, of this is even if it's something worth confirming, dash off this is to confirm we talked about X and we decided on Y. And thank you and blah blah blah. But
and I mean, listen, you have to sometimes you have to meet clients. So you may have a
yeah,
preferred communication style.
yeah,
Share that with your client.
yeah,
Your client really has a whole different style, then you need to address that early
yeah,
on.
yeah.
I know some communicators hate Slack. They hate it. They resist it. If a client says, you know, how do you guys feel about Slack? I've worked with people that have said, we hate it. We don't want to use it. I personally love Slack. I have some
Mhm.
clients that's our primary method of communication. It works super
Yeah.
well. We do quick stuff back and forth throughout the day.
Mhm.
And my email is nice and clean. And
Yeah.
email is only when there needs to be a thread. And
Oh,
for quick
totally.
forth, quick updates. We
Yeah.
just drop in Slack. If we need to hop on a quick Slack call, we can do that from the app. But some people hate that.
Yeah.
So again, and some people on my own team hate that. So a lot of times I'm the one who's in charge of the Slack channel and I make sure to like catch all the messages because I'm on it and it's no big deal. I'm at the
Yeah.
dog park and it's like Slack comes in and I can just answer it. No biggie. But again, you have to really understand what's going to work for you and share that with your
Yeah.
clients. People prefer phone calls.
Right. And
People
and
prefer
then
phone let your
yeah.
client know that, like, "Hey, listen, a phone call is a great way if you have a question or we need to chat about something, just here's the number,
Yeah.
here's how you
Yeah.
can reach."
And sometimes that works best. And I think, anything that because I don't know about you, I'm on my laptop most of the time. So it's nice to have at least one command center. So Slack, all those things are great. I even use something called Mighty Text where I can
Yes,
text from my desktop. So if people do text me, it's a little easier and you're not feeling like you're looking all around all the time. So any of
yeah,
those project management platforms are wonderful. And you have to meet your client at least halfway.
I
You can't
agree.
be incredibly absolutist about, "Oh, well, I don't do Windows."
But I
It's like,
think, Michelle, you said it in the beginning, and this is the
mm,
key, remembering that it's a relationship.
yeah,
And in any relationship, it does require some compromise. Not compromising your integrity, your morals, or compromising yourself,
right.
but sometimes meeting to find a mutually beneficial solution
Yes.
because everybody is not going to work the same way as you do.
Right,
And then finding clients and being, really intentional about who you do business with, because you do want your clients to align with how you work and who you are and what's
right,
important to you. And you want to do work that brings you joy
right.
because that's how you're most successful is when you're working with people that you really enjoy and you're doing the work that you really feel allows you to be satisfied in your career where you're really delivering value. But
Yeah.
and the communication thing is absolutely a part of it. I
Oh, yeah.
mean, there are some client types, and this came over time, learning what works and doesn't work, that are some that I'm just happy to not do business with them, not because 'cause they're
Mhm,
bad people, but because I know myself
mhm.
and I'm realistic about what works for me and creating the best environment for my success. So,
Right.
same for all of us. We all
Yeah,
have to figure that out and stick to it, and communications is a huge part of that.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And I'll do a little plug here. The next time the Solo PR Pro membership opens, there are so many wonderful resources for onboarding and establishing these communication points. So keep an eye out or visit soloprpro.com and get on the mailing list because then you'll find out next time membership opens. It's the
Yeah.
best resource money you'll ever spend. And
Definitely
Karen,
get on the mailing list, but also
yeah,
remember that we're here pretty
yeah,
much week. Sometimes we do pre-recorded broadcasts, and we're gonna
Mhm.
start to bring you even more content on our YouTube channel. So
Mhm.
please subscribe and like. We would
Yep,
love that. However you choose to connect with us, we're super appreciative of it.
we are.
And let us know if there are topics that you'd like us to address. We'd love to
Yeah.
hear from you.
Yes, please, please. That's communicate with us so we can meet your expectations. Well, we so appreciate your time and thank you for joining us on That's All a Life.